Hi, you're highly welcome to this YouTube channel. In this video, we'll be drafting, cutting and sewing 6 pieces blouse with a front zipper. Yes, it has the zipper at the front. So if this is something you're interested in or would love to learn, do well and keep watching. So let's dive right in. For this, I'll be making use of these two different Ankara fabrics that complement and sit well with each other. You can actually make use of one, but then I think having two different fabrics that complement each other brings out the uniqueness or beauty in a 6 pieces blouse. Also, I'll be making use of the lining, which is also very important, and also the zip, which is also very important, and then your paper stay is also very important. And one more thing, I'll be making use of the stay. Now we'll go right into drafting, and the very first step is to draft a simple basic bodice. So because of the kind of neckline that I intend to have on my 6 pieces blouse, I am going to fold in 2 to 4 inches at the top here because of the kind of neckline I am aiming for, which is the built up Queen Anne's neckline. So if this is not the kind of neckline you are aiming for, then you do not need to do this. Rather, you just go straight into drafting. So we'll go right ahead and do our drafting. Now for the drafting, the first step you would want to take is to mark out the length you want for your blouse. So for mine, I want mine to be 25 inches long, and I added 1 inch for aiming allowance, so making it 26 inches long. And as you can see, my pattern paper is 26 inches long, so I'll just go ahead and rule underneath it like this at the end of the pattern paper like this, and then I'll just indicate here as my full length or my hip length or hip line. Now after doing this, because of the fact that the zipper is going to be at the front, and obviously we are drafting the front pattern first, which is this, I'll go ahead and mark out 2 inches, which I'll use for the zipper at the front. So you already know there's no zipper going to be at the back. If you don't want your zipper to be at the front, then you do not need to, mark out these 2 inches. Rather, you just put the 2 inches at the back pattern. I hope you understand. So since there's a zipper for mine at the front, I went ahead to mark out 2 inches for the zipper allowance. So I'll go ahead and rule this out. And I will go ahead and indicate my zipper allowance here so we do not get confused during this drafting process. So henceforth, any drafting I'm going to do is going to start from this line. So next, I'll go ahead and divide the shoulder measurement by 2. So the shoulder measurement divided by 2 gave me 7.5 inches, which I went ahead to mark out here like this. Now for the neck width, I'll be making use of 3 inches for the neck width, and on this shoulder measurement, I'll come down by 1 inch. Then I'll go ahead and connect to the neck width like so. Next, I will mark out my armhole depth. So my armhole depth for me is 8 inches. I'll go ahead and mark it out, 8 inches, and I'll connect this back to the shoulder slope like this. Now on this armhole depth, I will divide my bust measurement by 4. So my bust measurement divided by 4 gave me 9.75. So I'll go ahead and mark it out here, and then I'll use my rule to connect like this. So by now, if you've watched my video before, you should be able to draft your basic bodice, and that is what we are doing. So next, I'll find the midpoint of this my armhole depth by placing my tape like this and then folding over. Obviously the midpoint is 4 inches. That is 8 divided by 2 is 4 inches. And then on those 4 inches, I would come in by half an inch like this. And then I am going to go ahead and connect this point to this point and then to this point to form my armhole curve. So you can use your free hand or you can use a curve rule, whichever you have at that point in time. You can use any one. So I am using curve rule for mine like this. Now after getting my front armhole curve, The next step to take is to go ahead and mark out my bust point, which I have marked out, which is 10.75. And next I'll mark out my under bust line, which is 14.75, and that is what I am marking out right now. If you do not know how to get your armhole depth, or you do not know how to go about your measurements, I'll go ahead and drop the link on the description box, because I have done a detailed video on all of that already. So I'll just drop the link on the description box. So this line represents my under bust line. Now to get my waistline, I will mark 3 inches from the under bust line, gives me my waistline, and this is a standard number. So 3 inches from your under bust line gives you your waistline. Now I'll just connect these dots together by ruling a straight line like this. Now this line represents my waistline. So moving on, the next step is to go ahead and draft out the princess dart. Now I would love to put it out here that there are various methods used in drafting a princess dart. There are various methods used. So if you have any accurate method you use in drafting your princess dart, please go ahead and draft out your princess dart. So for drafting the princess dart, I'll go ahead and mark out my dart line by dividing my nipple to nipple measurement by 2. So after dividing mine, I got 4 inches. So on this bust point, you will add half an inch, so making it 4.5 inches that I will mark out on this bust point. Then I'll go ahead and mark out exactly 4 inches on the under bust line like this, and then on the waistline I will also mark out 4 inches, and on the hip line I will also mark out 4 inches. So meaning is only on your bust point you will add half an inch. I hope you understand. So let me double check that I marked out 4 inches on this full length. So this is the 4 inches. So I'll go ahead and connect the dots. So I'll first of all connect my under bust to my waistline and to my hip line like this. Then I'll connect this to the bust point like this. Moving on, you'll find that the midpoint of this armhole curve. So I'll go ahead and measure what I have for the armhole curve. And after measuring, you can see that I arrived at 10 inches. So 10 inches divided by 2 gives me 5 inches, and that is my midpoint. So I'll go ahead and mark out the 5 inches on the armhole curve like so. Now I'll connect this 5 inches to my bust point like this. So for this type of princess dart, all your dart is going to be on this side. So that's just the difference. All your darts will be on this side. Now I will come down by 1 inch from my bust point like this. So the reason for coming down by 1 inch from my bust point is because I want to remove any form of pointiness from the bust point or nipple. Moving on, I will go out by 2 inches on my under bust line like this. So if your bust size is on the small size, please go out by 1.5 inches. And if your bust is on the medium size like mine, go out by 2 inches. But if it is on the much larger size, go out by 2.5 inches. So I will go ahead and mark out the 2 inches on my waistline and on my hip line like this. Now next step, I'll go ahead and connect these dots like this to rule a straight line like so. So the next thing is to connect this to this 1 inch I came down with from my bust point like this. So the next step is to mark 1.5 inches from that 5 inches midpoint I marked on my armhole curve. So I'll just mark 1.5 inches. Now if your bust size is small, make use of 1 inch. You mark at 1 inch. But if it's on the much larger size, you make use of 2 inches. So since mine is on the medium size, I am using 1.5 inches. So I'll connect this to the bust point. So you can go ahead and connect it to your bust point. So I'll connect like this. Now next, I'll just give here a good blend. Give it a good blending like this. At this point, my princess dart is ready. So the next step is to go ahead and mark out your body's measurement. After dividing them by 4, you mark them out. Now before doing that, I would want to extend this line. So please note that this line I'm extending is referred to as the chest line. This line is referred to as the chest line. So on this chest line, I'll divide my bust measurement by 4. My round bust measurement is 39. Divided by 4 gives me 9.75, which I've gone ahead to mark out like so. Then I'll go ahead and add 2 inches allowance to it like this, 2 inches sewing allowance. Now after marking out my 2 inches sewing allowance, I would replace back this dart intake here. So I have 1.5 inches here, and I will place it back like so. So I'm replacing it like so. Now on my underbust line, I will divide my round underbust or underbust circumference by 4. So my underbust circumference is 33 inches. 33 divided by 4 gives me 8.5, which I have marked out. And I will have my 2 inches sewing allowance. And also I will replace this dart intake, which is 2 inches. And I'll put this 2 inches back like so. Now on my waistline, I will also divide my round waist measurement by 4, which is 35 divided by 4 gives me 8.75, which I have marked out. And I will have my 2 inches sewing allowance as well. And also replace back this dart intake here. So I will put it back like so, the 2 inches. Now on my full length or hip length, I will divide my hip measurement by 4. So my hip is 41. 41 divided by 4 gives me 10.25, which I have marked out. And I'll go ahead and add my 2 inches sewing allowance. And I'll also replace back this dart intake here, which is 2 inches. I'll put it back here like so. So at this point, I'll go ahead and connect this to this to this. So I'll go ahead and connect like so. So because of the kind of neckline that I want for my 6 pieces blouse, which is the built up Queen Anne's neckline, I will not be cutting out this pattern yet. So I'm going to cut out this pattern after drafting out my neckline. But if you're not working with the built up Queen Anne's neckline, you can go ahead and come down by 3 inches or 6 inches or 7 inches, depending on how deep you want your neck depth to be. So this is the part that would also be cut out. And please do not forget to blend in your new armhole, to draw your new armhole like this. So you just connect like this. So this is your new armhole curve. I hope you do understand. Now, moving on, after blending in your new armhole, you can go ahead and cut it. If you're not working with the built up Queen Anne's neckline, you can go ahead and cut out your pattern. Next, I'll go ahead and draft out the back pattern. So for the back pattern, as you can see, I have already marked out my lines, and I used 3 inches as well for my neck width. And also I have folded in what I need for the built up Queen Anne's neckline. So I have marked out my shoulder as well, and then my armhole depth, which is 8 inches. And I have divided my round bust measurement by 4 and also marked it out as well. I also marked out my shoulder to my waistline, and then I marked out the full length for the blouse. If you're not working with the built up Queen Anne's neckline, you can just come down by 1 inch, which is the regular back neckline. You just come down by 1 inch and connect to your neck width. So that's it. So moving on, I'll go ahead and find the midpoint of my armhole depth. And as you already know, the midpoint is 4 inches. Now I'll connect this to the 9.75 inches that I marked out by drawing a curve like this. Next step is to mark out my dart line. So for my dart line, I'll divide my nipple to nipple measurements by 2. So my nipple to nipple measurement is 8 divided by 2 gives me 4, and I'll mark out the 4 on this chest line, and I will also mark out the 4 inches on my waistline like this, and I will also mark out the 4 inches on my full length. Now after doing this, I will go ahead and connect this dot using my rule. So I want to be certain that I marked out 4 inches on my waistline. So that's 4 inches. So I will go ahead and connect. So after connecting the lines, the next step I want to do is to go ahead and extend this my chest line so we don't get confused during this drafting of the back pattern. So I'll just indicate my chest line here. Then on my hip line, I'm going to come up by 2 inches on the dart line like this. Then you can just extend these lines upward. It's optional. So I'll go ahead and mark 1/2 inch on both sides of my waistline. So 1/2 inch on the right side and 1/2 inch on the left side as well. Then I'll connect this to these 2 inches and connect it back to my chest line like this. So I'll connect that 1/2 inch on both sides to my chest line point like this, as you can see. And I'll also connect to the 2 inches I came up with from my hip line. You can actually make use of your dart like this, but if you want a princess dart on your back pattern as well, you go ahead and connect the midpoint on your armhole to your chest line. After doing this, next step is to mark out your body's measurement. So on my chest line, I'll be dividing my bust measurement by 4, which is 39 divided by 4 gives me 9.75. So I'm going to mark that out on my chest line like this, and I'll add 2 inches for sewing allowance. Now on my waistline, I'll divide my waist measurement by 4 as well, which is 35 divided by 4, 8.75. I've marked it out, and I'll add 2 inches for sewing allowance. So this dart opening here, which is 1 inch, I am going to go ahead and put it back like this. And on my hip length or full length, I'll divide my hip measurement by 4, which is 10.25. I'll mark it out, and I'll also add 2 inches for sewing allowance, and I'll connect the dots. Because this video was becoming too lengthy, I had to make a separate video on how to draft the built up Queen Anne's neckline. So this video is only focused on making a 6 pieces blouse. So make sure you draft out the kind of neckline you want before cutting. At this point, my built up Queen Anne's neckline has been drafted out, so I went ahead with my cutting. Now this is my back pattern, and you can see the way I am cutting it out. And this is my front pattern with the built up Queen Anne's neckline already drafted out, so I'm cutting it out as well. So go ahead and cut. Now at this point my patterns are ready, so I'll just indicate all the necessary information I need, just in case I would want to use this pattern again for a 6 pieces blouse and for this same kind of neckline. So you go ahead and indicate on yours. Next step is to create that flare effect in a 6 pieces blouse, and I'll start with my center front. So I'll bring in a piece of pattern paper and place it underneath like so. Now go ahead and use my tape to hold this down, and as you can see, this is starting from my waistline, because obviously your flare effect starts from your waistline. That is where your flare starts from, right? So that is why this is starting from the waistline. If you actually do not want a flare at your center front, you can go ahead and omit this side and just only put your flare on this side. But for me, I want on both sides. So I'll go ahead and mark out how full I want my flare to be on both sides. So I'm making use of 3 inches. You can actually make use of 4 inches or 5 inches. It all depends on how full you want your flare to be. So I'll connect this to the waistline like so. And this 3 inches was marked on the full length line on both sides. So I'll connect to my waistline. I'll connect the 3 inches to my waistline like so. Now because I do not want any sharp point here, I will go up by 2 inches like so, and I'm going to curve this back to my full length line like this. So you can see I have my curve. So I'll go ahead and cut this out. And you can see how beautiful the flare is looking on the pattern paper. So moving on, I'll bring in my side front. And I'll also place it like this on another piece of pattern paper. And I'll also hold it down using the sellotape as well. So you can see it's also starting from the waistline. So all of this is going to start from the waistline. All of this flare effect starts from the waistline. So I'll go ahead and also mark out the 3 inches on both sides as well, and then I'll connect to my waistline like this as well. So if you're making use of 4 inches, meaning you're going to be putting 4 inches on both sides. If you're making use of 5 inches, you're going to put 5 inches on both sides. I hope you understand. So I'll also come up by 2 inches and curve it back to the full length line like so. And I'll go ahead and cut this out as well. Next, I'll bring in my center back, and you know that this center back is closed in the sense that there is no opening at the center, and because of that there will be no flare at that center. So in placing it on the piece of pattern paper, you're going to go ahead and place it on this side, meaning the flare is only going to be on the dart side. I hope you grab. So I'll go ahead and mark out 3 inches like so on the dart side, and I will connect this to my waistline. If there's any part you do not understand, don't hesitate to drop your question on the comment section. I'll try as much as possible to respond to you. So I'll go up by 2 inches as well, like so, and I'll connect this back, curve this back to the full length line. And after doing this, I'll go ahead and cut this out. Now I'll go ahead and bring in my side back, and I'll also place it on a new piece of pattern paper, and I will hold it down with sellotape on both sides as well. So I'll just hold it down like this, and then I'll go ahead and mark out my 3 inches on both sides as well, and I'll connect this to the waistline. Now after connecting to the waistline, I'll also come up by 2 inches to create my curve on both sides, and these 2 inches I'll curve it back to the full length line like so, and I'll go ahead and cut this out. So my pattern papers are ready, and I'll go ahead and use this to cut out the fabric while the fabric is on fold. And as you can see, I have cut it out, and this is my back pattern and this is my front pattern, and you can see I left ½ an inch on only the dart side for the dart joining. So for the fabric, I cut it out on fold, meaning I have double except for the center back, which there is no opening at the center. So as you can see, I cut out the fabric, I cut out the hair stay, I cut out the paper stay, and I also cut out the lining. So this is what you go ahead and do. Now I'm going to just open this up. Let me show you how you can go ahead and iron in your hair stay and paper stay. So on your fabric, let me try and arrange this so you can see for yourself, and I'll be using this my front pattern as an example. So this is my front pattern, my center front pattern precisely. I'll go ahead and iron the hair stay to the wrong side of the fabric. Please take note, the hair stay you ironed it to the wrong side of the fabric, and on the lining you iron your paper stay to the lining. I hope this is understood. So on all linings you iron your paper stay, and on all fabrics you iron your hair stay. So you go ahead and do that, please. So you can see the center back, you can see there is no opening at the center. So that is how it's going to be for the lining, the fabric, the paper stay, and the hair stay. And you can see there's only flare at this side. So this is what I was trying to explain earlier on. There is no opening at the center for the center back because there is no zip allowance at the back. It is at the front. I hope you do understand. Now the rest are also double. So at this point, I have gone ahead to iron my paper hair stay to the fabric, as you can see, and I've ironed the paper stay to the lining. On all lining I've ironed the paper stay, and on all fabric I've ironed the hair stay. And the next step is to go ahead and stitch the darts together. Now when stitching the darts, make sure you use the ½ an inch allowance that you left out on the fabric while cutting. I hope you do understand. So I'll just go ahead and arrange this properly. And also, before I forget, You might want to notch your zipper allowance. Yes, just give it a little notch to know that, okay, this is where my zipper allowance starts from. I hope you grab. For joining my darts, I'm going to pick one side of my center front, and I'll also pick the side of my front pattern, and I will go ahead and stitch it like this, as you can see. So I'm going to drag it and make sure the full length matches with each other. I hope you understand, and I will do the same thing on the other side as well. I hope you do understand. So I'll stitch it as well, and after doing this I'll show you guys. Then for my back pattern, I'll go ahead and also stitch the sides to it as well, like so. So I'll go ahead and stitch the sides to it, making sure the right sides are both facing each other as well, and do the same thing for your linings as well. So I have joined my back fabrics together, and I've also joined the linings, and I've gone ahead to iron. And before ironing, I gave my dart allowance some notches to make it more relaxed, and then I ironed. So the next step is to join the fabric to the lining, and in doing so, we're going to make sure that the right sides are both facing each other like this. As you can see, the right sides are facing each other. And then I will go ahead and stitch down the full length. So this is the first step. You stitch down the full length first. So after joining the full length together, you go ahead and close up the sides. But then before closing up the sides, make sure you stitch your necklines together. That is your fabric and your lining neckline together. And also top stitch. You leave the shoulder open, leave the shoulder and the armhole open. So those are the only things that are going to be open, the shoulder and the armhole. I hope you grab. Now this is my front pattern, so I'll go ahead and arrange this, and I am also going to join the fabric and the lining together. So I'll go ahead and bring my fabric in like this, and make sure the right sides are facing each other as well. As you can see, make sure the right sides are facing each other. And after arranging properly, I'll go ahead and stitch down the neckline and also top stitch on it. So do not close up the shoulder and do not close up the armhole as well. Just only stitch the neckline, these sides and the full length, and also close up the sides. I hope you do understand. And also make sure you always give your stitching a very good press. So you do the same thing on the other side of your front pattern as well, like so. So I'll go ahead and do this, and I will bring it back to you after stitching and ironing. Now I have done my stitches, so I also went ahead to iron in the 2 inches for my zipper allowance. So I'll go ahead and sew in my zipper to this front piece, and I will bring it back after sewing in the zip. And I have stitched my back fabric to the lining as well. And for the front pattern, as you can see, I have added my zip to it, and this is the wrong side of the front pattern. Please always make sure you give your stitches a good iron press. It is very important for a very neat outcome. Now next step is to go ahead and join this front fabric to the back fabric. So we're going to shaping them. So you go ahead and join them and make sure the fabrics are both facing each other. If you do not know how to shape in your outfit or shape in your blouse, I have done a video on this before now, so I'll drop the link on the description box so you can go ahead and shape in it. So go ahead and shape in it or join the sides together. And after doing this, the next step is to go ahead and join your shoulders together. So that's the next step to do. You go ahead and join the shoulders together, and you can see for the neckline, when I said top stitching, this is what I meant by top stitching. All you have to do is after joining to your fabric to your lining, you bring the rough stitching to the lining side and you stitch it down to the lining neatly. I also did the same thing on the back pattern as well. So moving on, for joining the shoulders together, all you have to do is to bring in your front shoulder and place it on your back shoulder like this, and turn over the back lining like so. So invariably you have your front shoulder in between your back lining and your back fabric. I hope you understand. So you go ahead and turn it over and then stitch on it using 1/2 inch. And this way of joining the shoulders gives it a neat finishing. So I have closed up the sides, or shaping the sides, and for this you can see how beautiful it is looking, how the flare is. So there is something I would love to indicate when shaping an outfit with flare, be it your 6 pieces blouse or your peplon. As far as it has a flare, make sure that when you get to where the flare starts from, you use 1 inch for sewing allowance. And obviously your flare always starts from your waist, be it your peplon, your 6 pieces or your 8 pieces, so on and so forth. From your waist down to your full length, you use 1 inch for sewing allowance when it comes to the flare. But for the bust and the waist, you use your exact measurements to shaping it, or close up the sides. I hope you understand. So I'll go ahead and cut out this extra leftover that I have on my armhole. So I'll go ahead and cut it out, and after cutting it out, go ahead and sew in the kind of sleeve you want for your 6 pieces blouse. So if you enjoyed this video, and if this video was helpful to you, do well to hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. So for my sleeve, I went with the puff cap sleeve, and if you want the puff cap sleeve for your 6 pieces blouse as well, I did a video on that, so I'll also drop the link on the description box. So this is it guys, and you can see how beautiful the 6 pieces blouse is looking. You can actually rock this on your skirts and pants, and it's always going to come out looking so beautiful and so at this point I would say ciao and see you on my next video. Love ya.